Thank you very much, India Today, for inviting me for this gorgeous conclave. My only grouse is that the BYT and the PYTs have spoken today morning and they speak tomorrow morning. And there is this horrible orator to ask to speak immediately after lunch on a Friday afternoon. Not fair at all. Not fair at all. But that's it. It's not very often that an orator gets a captive audience. And as long as I've got one, I might as well encash upon it, capitalize upon it. I've been asked to speak on a subject which is accountability institutions and their role in democracy. Now, we the people of India have given to ourselves a parliamentary democracy. A democracy, of course, of which we are all very proud. And a democracy which has consistently, excepting for the last couple of years, given us near double-digit growth, inclusive growth too. A truly vibrant democracy where each pillar of the democracy has delivered its role in a very scintillating fashion. And we in this country are very conscious of the right to freedom, liberty, equality, etc., that is not available to lots of citizens across the world, and we are very proud of that also. The three pillars, which is the legislature, the judiciary, and the executive, have done tremendous, commendable work. The fourth estate, 24/7, has done equally commendable work, often on overdrive. But then they represent the people in a large number of ways, and the role in the entire fallout of various events has been remarkable. But every institution, even if it's expected to deliver efficiently, must have an element of vigilance put into it. Especially in a participative democracy like ours, where power ultimately vests with the people, there needs to be an element of vigilance, and that's where the accountability institutions come in. That's where institutions like, there is a parliament, there is a judiciary, there is an executive, but in addition to that, the institutions of horizontal accountability like the Vigilance Commission, the Information Commission, and then the poor auditor also falls in that category. Then there are the vertical institutions beyond the horizontal, which is, of course, the press, the NGOs, and lots of other citizens who today have come center stage. And it's a wonderful situation because what I've been saying all along, that these are the people who constituted the silent majority. And this silent majority today wants to be heard. And all kudos to the media, which is ensuring that the voice of that silent majority, which till today was not heard by anyone, is really reaching those places where it is meant to be heard and where it can make a credible difference. Now, go down to the days of Kautilya, you go down to the days of the Athenian state, you go down to any other place in history, and you find that these accountability institutions were put in place. Kautilya has mentioned his Arthashastra, that just the way a fish which is swimming in the water, you don't know when it is drinking that water. Those who deal with public monies need to be put on focus, on notice, made to be sit in glass houses where each of their actions is seen by the public at large, activities are made transparent, and they are held accountable by institutions which democracy has put. Now, modern day democracies where those whom we elect to power, those who represent us, those who exercise power on behalf of us, must be obligated to ensure that all the actions that they take gives assurance to the public on the street that those actions are for the benefit of the man on the street, because that is the obligation that they need to do. And by virtue of having been elected and given that power to act on behalf of the normal person, they must be accountable to the man on the street. Now, most modern-day constitutions are also based on the principles of separation of powers. These are being done as it is, but at the same time, accountability institutions are the core institutions of a successful and performing democracy, because these are the only institutions who provide a restraint on the abuse of power and ensure that there is no arbitrary behavior of the executive. These are the institutions who are an independent mechanism to ensure that things move in the manner they are expected to move, and that public trust is created in these institutions or the government that they represent, so that the public feels that the monies which were collected from them, and believe me, these monies are collected compulsorily, there is no element of any kind of discretion in collection of taxes. Taxes have to be paid. But I must know, the public must know, how the monies which have been collected as taxes have been spent. Have they actually been spent for the public good? Now, just the fact that today we are at a critical juncture. The ability of the system to deliver or enforce accountability cannot be challenged and should not be challenged. But bottlenecks which impinge upon accountability and have been created in accountability need to be removed. Accountability cannot be regulated or relegated to a secondary position in pursuit of power and money. Typically, people with vested interests in the system attempt to subvert the rules of government accountability on the one hand and free market competition on the other hand. Several transformational developments taking place in the country present opportunities for this section of players to try to divert decision-making in government and public institutions for their personal agenda. These people then become the most insidious threats to a healthy democracy, and it is therefore crucial that the accountability institutions must reposition themselves to the changing scenario and must assist to serve interests of the public. And it is one of these institutions that I represent today, wherein we sincerely believe that our job is not merely to audit the expenditure of government or government institutions. Our mandate today is far more than what it was and far different what it was 65 years back. The entire job of the public auditor today is to ensure that the executive, that the government is held financially accountable to the legislature. And the ultimate power rests with the people. They have elected the legislature. Now, in doing so, it's not enough for us to conduct audits, prepare reports, and plug them into Parliament. We feel that we owe it to society, to civil society, to people who are interested, that where expenditure has been made on developmental institutions, developmental schemes, or health schemes, education schemes, rural employment, or whatever it is on, we need to sensitize public opinion on government spending. And as Rahul mentioned, that our reports neither have content nor are they packaged well, you said in the beginning. Okay, previously. He corrected himself. Media never does that. He says previously they were neither had content nor packaging. Now at least they have packaging. He's doubtful about the content. He, he says it's like Jeffrey Archer. And everybody believes that it's more fiction that we write and it's not content. So, but we thought we must sensitize public opinion. And in doing so, wherever we do audits, in health and education kind of sectors, we need to prepare documents which are easily readable, small, concise, and bring out the true picture. And that's why we brought out concise booklets, which we call Noddy books. Enid Blyton's Noddy, the books were roughly of this size, say same shape, didn't have more pages than what this one has. This has 18 pages. This is on the Rural Employment Guarantee Program. Anybody who reads this booklet would have sufficient knowledge of what our findings are, because it gives you the trend of the finding. And if anybody wants to read the entire detailed report, we have put a CD inside it in the end. The entire idea is social sector, where we need to sensitize public opinion, because most of the parliamentarians, believe me, after I've signed a report, I don't read it again. It's not very inviting. But this is enough to, this one is on rural employment guarantee, this is on the rural health mission. The idea is, and we give them out free just to ensure that the NGOs, the media, schools and colleges, the citizen at large, citizens groups, etc., are properly sensitized about huge programs in which the spending is nothing less than 45 to 50,000 crores every year. Now, worldwide, governments have been repositioning audit institutions. I must give you the classic example of the Auditor General of the United States. The 110th Congress in 2004 passed a resolution which, inter alia, said, just as the Auditor General in India is called the CAG, in the US, the institution was GAO, General Accounting Office. But in 2004, they repositioned it. They continued with the same acronym, GAO, but they have started calling Government Accountability Organization. That makes the sea change in the entire focus of what the institution should be doing. And in the words of the Auditor General of the United States itself, he says, worldwide, there is nothing that the United States government does or spends on which is not available for us to not only audit, but to see whether the optimality or suboptimality of that policy initiative has been worthwhile or not. And that is why in India, we have repositioned ourselves. We do not anymore do the conventional financial or compliance audits. We do what is known as performance audit, where the objective of the outcomes of spending, the efficiency of spending, the efficacy of the spending, and the economy of that expenditure is looked into us. But obviously, when you get into newer domains, when the old order changes and the new order comes into position, there is a great deal of inertia that you are running up against. So obviously, there will be some murmuring against what one is doing, and that's how the situation today has unfolded itself. Now, in the opening sentence, I was asked not to do too much of talking. He says, it's enough if you stand at the lectern and take questions. So I'd like to conclude by saying just one paragraph, which I thought we should, as citizens who have become sensitive to executives, to legislature, or to anything that's happening, even in the judiciary, I think we have a role to play. And that role is a very significant role. And as I stand before you, I'd like to remind you that we are poised at that juncture in Indian history, where the pledge of the framers of our Constitution places a huge challenge on us. The challenge is that we were entrusted with the leisure, the blessing of democracy, which brought within it an opportunity to practice and succeed in self-governance. Today, we need to remind ourselves that democracy is an experiment in government which succeeds or fails on its own merit. On the merit of the people who need to actively engage in nation building, on the merit of those in whom we place that fiduciary trust to control public monies and thereby our own welfare itself, and on the merit of the institutions that we create to ensure that indeed all actions and programs of government are architectured for the good of the people. I stand before you to remind you that there is really no Bharat or India. And there's been so much of talk about it. We are one homogeneous whole. And we, the people, along with our geographical boundaries, constitute the nation. And we, the people, have given ourselves a government or a state. This responsibility enjoins upon us to ensure that the state works for our benefit and that the nation can never be subjugated to the state, and that our institutions are strengthened to ensure that those in whom we place the trust to administer on our behalf indeed do so, placing our welfare as paramount. And I stand before you to remind you that ultimately it is we the people whom posterity will hold accountable if today we do not ensure that we bequeath to Gen Next an India richer in all respects than what we had inherited. Thank you.
Mr. Vinod, right, there's been a lot of talk over the past several months about the government being very unhappy with you. From the Prime Minister, the President, the INB Minister, they've all spoken about how you're crossing the veritable Lakshman Rekha. What is it that you want to tell those who think that you've gone beyond your mandate, which was to audit accounts, created a monster, a monolith which it was never meant to be, where you now comment on policy matters which the government believes was never the KEG's mandate, sir?
Really, nobody in government has been able to point out to us where we have questioned policy. We have looked at policy in, well, 3 of my reports that I can immediately think of. First page says, somewhere we have said, policy formulation is the sole prerogative of government. Audit cannot get into that paradigm. Audit's job is to audit the implementation of that policy. And that's exactly what we have been doing in each of the audits that we have done. Now, I've said it earlier, unfortunately, external auditor comes post the event. Yes, we are wiser by hindsight, but that's our role worldwide in 191 countries. External auditors of my kind do a job which is a post-mortem. We unfortunately cannot be seen, as I've said earlier, to be cheerleaders for the government. And it is a kind of an adversarial position, but we make recommendations. We try to suggest mid-course corrections. We give early warnings. And if those are accepted, society benefits. If they are stonewalled, society loses.
A senior minister in the government, when he was speaking to me, said, you are the chief nitpicker of government policy. And because of all these KEG reports, there's so much paranoia and fear in bureaucracy that no one is prepared to put pen on paper because they're scared of Vinod Rai coming after them. They say, we'd rather squat on files, not move these files, let no decisions be taken, let the economy grind to a halt, but we will not be hounded because in hindsight, it's always easy to find fault. They called you the chief nitpicker.
Well, by profession, we are fault finders to the nation. There's no doubt about it. We are fault finders. We are expected to. The only thing is where we see good practices, we bring them out, we try to disseminate them. Well, as regards the fact that somebody fears that we will come chasing them, I must say those are alibis for non-performance. It's a total bogey. It's a red herring. Those who inherently cannot decision, well, even you are not allowing me to give me.
No, I think it's working. Just give it another shot.
Those who inherently are incapable of taking decisions stand behind this excuse. That's about all.
You know, during one of the interviews I did with Digvijay Singh, he made a comment, and I'd like to quote that to you. If the judiciary will do the executive's work, the CAG will formulate policies, and civil society will formulate laws, then how will democracy function? What does the CAG want to become, if not an accountant? Does he intend to become the next Prime Minister?
I don't want to comment upon it. He's a very, Mr. Digvijay Singh is a very respected senior member of the Indian polity. But I've made this remark earlier, where have we questioned policy? Nobody has pointed that out to us. We have seen policy formulation and we've said, okay, this policy was formulated, but in the implementation, things have gone wrong. And that's just what we've done. We have nowhere questioned policy formulation. We sincerely believe that policy formulation is indeed the sole prerogative of the political executive, no one else.
But there's this big conspiracy theory all across Delhi that once you retire, in a few months from now, you actually wish to join politics. Is that correct, sir?
Look, Rahul, if I deny it, you won't believe me. If I accept it, well, then I'm going down the road. I best leave it to time to decide what actually I do.
I would believe you if you were denied, but you're not denying it.
Pardon me?
I would believe it if you were denied, but you're not denying it. And that lack of denial also seems to indicate something.
Will you get the sole affirmation of all those collected here? Well, at present, and indeed in my entire career, I've been totally apolitical. I hope to continue in the same fashion.
You will not join a political party in the future?
I've made my statement.
Okay.